What's up, guys? Horn MMA 13 back with another fight night prediction video. This time for UFC fight night, Vettori versus Dolidze at the Apex. This is shit. I'm sorry, I just can't lie. This is one of the worst fight night cards that I've seen the UFC put on in quite a while. I thought we was going to end the Apex at this point. I didn't think I'd be sat here in almost like mid-2025 discussing an Apex card. I really didn't. I mean, I was thinking we'd see the end of these by this year, but we're just going to have to go through it, I suppose. We've got great pay-per-views coming up. Well, one good pay-per-view. The Canadian pay-per-view looks pretty bad, actually. But we're going to power through it. We're gonna go first fight on the main card. Kevin Vallejos versus Sung Woo Choi. Now, Vallejos, Argentinian prospect, 23 years of age. He's got a really, really aggressive style. He actually fought Gene Silva on the Contender Series in 2023. He lost that fight by decision, but he did look like exciting and not afraid to throw in that fight. He looked like he had a chin. And after that, he went on to the regional scene because I think he could have easily been given a contract, to be fair, after that, even though he lost. But he went back to the regional scene and actually got two finishes, one by submission and one by knockout. And the knockout was in the first round. And in the Gene Silva fight, he showed that he has that knockout power and that aggression, which I personally, that's not going to get you to the top of these type of divisions. You need the skill like Gene Silva, as he showed in their fight, but it can get you far in these lower level fights, and that's what he's got here with Sung Woo Choi, who doesn't have much of a chin. He's been KO'd recently a couple of times, which is never a good sign in the featherweight division. You know, you don't always see as many KOs early, but he's been getting clipped early in his fights by hooks, two first round finishes as well. So it's not like it's been a accumulation of damage. It's clearly a lack of chin from Choi, and it's just not. It's not really the type of style that I think is gonna be a good matchup for Woo Choi. I just think someone as aggressive as this, a debut, you know, coming off a Contender Series first round knockout, I think Choi's going to get clipped in this one. I don't think it's going to come in the first round, because I think when you've been KO'd twice in the first, like Choi, you'd be stupid to not be cautious in the first. So I think he's going to feel his way into the fight. I can see Choi possibly just edging the first round, and then when he gets that confidence, I think Vallejos is just going to clip him, man. I just think he's going to use that superior boxing fundamentals, because Choi's more of like a range, pick at your striker, and he's a lengthy fighter, whereas Vallejos is quite stocky, you know, that kind of American wrestler build, but a lot more aggressive. He's really got a great gas tank as well. In that Gene Silva Contender Series site a couple of years ago, he just didn't stop. He just got outclassed by the more fundamentally sound guy. But this guy has got good boxing fundamentals. The problem is that he just hasn't got quite the patience or the like kicking game that a Gene Silva has. So I think in this fight, the boxing will be enough, and I think he will get the second round stoppage. I think it'll probably come due to a hook, because that's what Choi seems to be susceptible to. I think it'll be like an exchange probably, and then he just gets clipped coming out the pocket, Choi, and I just think he's not got a chin, so he's probably going to go down, and that'll be a good night for him. He'll probably get follow-up shots, and then the referee will jump in, and it'll be a good debut for our guy, Kevin Vallejos. Moving on. Second fight on the main card. This is not a good main card. Bear with me while I pronounce this guy's name. Dia Nugashi, I think I got that right, versus Brenson Ribeiro. Typical Brazilians who just can't decide what name they're going to use. I mean, why can't they just say Brendan or Benson? No, Brenson. Brazilians. Brenson Ribeiro versus Dia Nugashi. I don't want to mess up that name because it could be quite risky. Nugashi. Shit, I've said it. Ribeiro is very, very wild. He gets clipped a lot. In my notes here, I've got that in his previous fights, he's been finished in the first round multiple times. I think in his last 4 fights, he's been finished twice in the first round. Similar to the last fight, but the difference is it is light heavyweight, so at least it's expected that in these fights you're going to get clipped if you're having a firefight, which is the style of Ribeiro. Now, one thing that really annoys me is Dolidze missed weight by 4.5 pounds, and that is just inexcusable. I don't care what anyone says. When you're at this level in the UFC and you're missing weight by that many pounds on your debut as well, I hope they cut this guy. Unfortunately, I think he's going to get the win, and I think he's going to do it in impressive fashion because he's facing someone who just doesn't have a refined style and also doesn't have a chin, which is like the worst combination you could have, being a wild striker and a bit retarded, but also not having a chin. Like, it's literally the Michael Chandler syndrome. Mind you, to be fair, Chandler does have an half-decent chin, but at light heavyweight, you can't do that. And he's fighting someone in Ribeiro who has got power, you know, got finishes on his record, and he's wild. So it's 2 wild guys fighting, but one of them doesn't have a chin. What do you think is going to happen? Zigaway, he's going to get the win here, but I think it's going to be probably in the first round, unlike the last fight, because these 2 guys are going to be wild. They're not going to have that fear that other fighters would have. So I think it's going to be a first round knockout for Dolidze. I think he should be cut because he missed weight by 4.5 pounds. The knockout's probably going to come different to the last fight. I think it's going to be more in an exchange outside, someone coming in and getting clipped. Because I do think that when you've got 2 wild fighters, one of them's going to come in and just get caught coming in with an exchange rather than, you know, a hook. I think it's going to be like a counter strike. And I think Zigaway has got more strength of like, he's got more power basically. And that's going to be the difference maker in this. He's got more strength as well. So if there's a situation where there's a clinch exchange, I think he's the one who's likely to push out of that and get his shot off first. So I just think it's all wrong for Ribeiro. And I think, unfortunately, even though he's made weight and he's fighting someone 4.5 pounds heavier, it's not going to be any justice in this fight for him. He's just going to get clipped and shut down completely. Probably brutal fashion because he's got no chin, as I've said. And Zigaway, whatever he's called, is just going to get a win and not get punished for the fact he missed weight by 4.5 pounds, which the UFC needs to really look into because it's dangerous, especially when you're fighting in a division like light heavyweight where one shot can put you out. And it can, we've seen many times people get extremely hurt, and it's not good to miss weight, especially at light heavyweight. Go up to heavyweight, stop being a pussy if you want to miss weight by that many pounds. Go up to heavyweight, see how you get along there. When Aspinall's ironing you out with one shot and then following up on you, you know, hammer fist. That's what I want to see with this guy. He's like the Mario Batista now, the new Mario Batista. I don't like this guy automatically straight away just for that. And I'm really going to wait till he gets ironed out. Mario Batista's number 1 on the list, and then this guy I want to see ironed out again. Moving on. By the way, I think it's going to be first round. I've said that, but I do think it's going to come with a counter shot because he has got good striking, Zigaway, and I think he's probably got the faster hands. So I'm going to expect him to get the shot connected before Ribeiro can land. Moving on. Fight number 3 on the main card. Alexander Hernandez versus Kurt Holloway. Now, Hernandez, in his last fight, fought at lightweight for the first time, and this is now his second fight at lightweight. Now, he won a split decision in that fight, but I believe that was a clear win for Hernandez. And since moving up to lightweight, he has looked like he's had a completely different gas tank. In that fight, he did not gas at all. Previous fights, that's affected him, and he's been on the wrong end of those split decisions. But this time, he's got the win. And now he's coming into this on a win, and he's 32 now, in his prime. And I remember when I predicted his last fight, I did predict him to win that one against Hubbard. Because I felt coming up in weight, he's always been known for his poor gas tank, and I thought that would be less of a problem, and I was right in that prediction. And this fight, I've got to go with him again. Kurt Holloway, 37 years of age, is a prospect, which is always worrying to me when you're that age and you've been seen as a prospect. He's got good grappling, but Hernandez has got good takedown defence. He's probably got the more faster hand speed, so he's going to be able to land and piece up Holloway, who's got, you know, he ain't got any other advantage. It's not like he throws a lot of kicks. He's just a grappler who throws hands, and if he's got a speed disadvantage, you know, he's the older guy, which, you know, you'd expect him to have the slower hands, and he's never been known for having like great striking. He's just more of a volume guy. So I think Hernandez also, now with the better gas tank, will be able to throw more punches. He won't be as inactive in there. He's going to put the numbers up, and he's going to get the strikes, and he's going to be able to outpoint Holloway, I think, here. I don't think he'll get the finish because he's not known as a knockout artist with his hands. He can knock you out with his kicks. Hernandez, that's another advantage he's got in this fight, that he throws kicks. So I think he's going to be able to outpoint Holloway. I think he's got all the advantages there. He's coming into his prime, and I actually think Hernandez could be a top 10. Sorry, don't get too ahead of yourself. A top 25 lightweight. I think he can be a top lightweight, not top 15 or top 10. There's too many talented guys there. It's the most stacked division in the UFC, but I think he can make a living in this lightweight division. He can win one, lose one in the lower ranks of the division and keep his contract. And I think he's got a bit of a brighter future now at this division where he's not weight trained. So Hernandez decision, outpointing Holloway. I actually think it's probably going to be a shutout. No split decisions this time. I think Hernandez just going to piece him up, and Holloway will go for the takedowns. He'll shoot every round, but he just won't get any success because Hernandez has always had good takedown defence, and he does have that stocky build where he's got enough strength, and he's got his lower centre of gravity, I think, will help him balance-wise. You know, when he's got these single legs and he's trying to stay up against the fence, I think he'll be able to balance and stop that takedown. Moving on, the co-main event of UFC Fight Night, Vettori versus Dolidze. What a classic this is, this card. Brilliant. Co-main event, Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos versus the legendary Chidi Njoku, Chidi Bang Bang. Best nickname in the UFC. The biggest weight bully in the UFC, dos Santos. His best performances have come against legendary names such as Luigi Vendramini. When he got a knockout in the second round there, he couldn't even finish him as quick as Paddy Pimblett. And BSD, to be fair, who is a decent name, but he's been on a downward slope since the Poirier fight. His best performances are when he's been the weight bully. I mean, he's a big welterweight with power, and he's fought a surprising amount of lightweights. I mean, and when he's at welterweight, he's still usually the bigger guy. I think that in this fight, he's going to find out that when he's not got a weight advantage, he's not the same guy, and he's getting older in age. He's like 36 now, and he's not going to be able to out-strength Chidi. He's not going to have that ability in this fight because Chidi is one of the most physically imposing fighters at the weight. And when you're at welterweight, you know, any weight above lightweight, really, strength is a big factor in the striking, because when you're a welterweight and you're a bigger guy, you've seen it in the past in fights. Like a recent example of this is probably the Carlos Prates Neil Magny fight. Like, Prates is just such a big welterweight, and he can just stop any takedown, and that's why he's so effective. And you saw the knockout against Neil Magny. Now Ian Garry, a more stringy guy, not as stocky, he can't knock out anyone. You know what I mean? Apart from Song Kanan, who's a bum. So, and he nearly got finished in that fight. Sorry, you know, if you watch this channel, I hate Ian Garry. But Carlos Prates, you know, a good example of this. If you've got the strength and you can stop the takedowns of an Elizeu dos Santos, which I think Chidi will be able to do, he's just not going to be as effective, because he does tend to land his shots because you're worried about that takedown, and you're worried about the fact that you're not going to be able to get up because he's fighting smaller guys. This is a rare time where he's fighting someone with more mass than him, and I think he's not going to have that same fear factor, Chidi Njoku, and I think he's going to be able to land shots because he's not going to be as worried about them takedown scenarios, because he has got the strength to get back to his feet, and he's shown that in previous fights. And this is a really, really intriguing one for me, because I think if it's a striking match, they're very evenly matched. And I think Alessio Dos Santos is really going to struggle to impose himself here. So it's going to be a matter of skills and who's got the better skills. There's no power advantage as such in this fight. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Dos Santos can do here. And I think it's going to be a really interesting style matchup on the feet, because Dos Santos is more of a striker and Chidi's more of a kicker and a more rangy fighter. So I'm looking forward to it. But if I had to pick a winner, I think Dos Santos is going to still get this one done, simply because of the fact he's got the wrestling factor. Even though he won't get the takedown, I think he'll be able to win the fight by control against the cage, because it's very evenly matched. Plus, as I've said, Chidi's more of an outside striker, whereas Dos Santos is more of a front foot fighter. So I've got to go with Dos Santos still. Saying all that, I still have to go with him here. But I think it's going to be one of the more closer matches that you could make in this division, because they are very similar and very similar build. Moving on to the main event, finally, the one we've all been waiting for: Marvin Vettori versus Roman Dolidze. Now, Dolidze, immediately when I looked at this fight on paper, I thought Dolidze can win this by decision. But he's going to decision with Anthony Smith, and it wasn't a washout. And that worries me, because who doesn't knock out Anthony Smith? You know, and if you go to decision with him, it should be all clean, like a shutout. And it isn't. It was a close-ish fight in one of the rounds. And I struggle to pick him in this fight, because Marvin Vettori's been out for nearly 2 years. Which, you'd think that's a sign that it's going to be a really tough one, for him to come back in any kind of top 20, top 15 matchup. But it's not a good sign that he's going to decisions with Anthony Smith. Now, I think Marvin Vettori, obviously, we know he's got the chin. We know he's the king of the apex. We know he most recently, which wasn't recent at all, it was back in 2023, October, had a good fight against Jared Cannonier, where I couldn't believe he didn't get knocked out. We've seen Cannonier recently, knockout in the 4th round, a very, very good opponent. So you've got to say, if we're going on last performances, Marvin Vettori is impressive, even though he's usually getting beat up. Dolidze, he's got the style to win this fight, because he's got that imposing style, similar to in the last fight, actually, a similar style to Dos Santos, but at a higher weight class, middleweight. So he's got the skills to do this, he's got the striking, but I feel like Marvin Vettori's toughness and the fact that Dolidze might not be quite as tough could end up being one of those fights where he just drowns Dolidze, uses his imposing, because like I said, he's got the imposing figure, Dolidze. So if he's going to use it against him, and maybe he can possibly out-strength him by just taking more shots and taking more damage, and then just power him out in the 4th, maybe, like the reverse of what happened to him in the Cannonier fight. He could do that. He could dominate late into the fight and really take over. And I feel like if he can outpower him in the clinches as well on the fence, he could also possibly finally use his wrestling, which could be the factor, because Dolidze has no wrestling. That's why he struggled with Smith. He couldn't do anything with him, because Smith was literally just walking him down, because he doesn't have the power, Dolidze, that someone like Jared Cannonier has. And that's why he's not in the top 10. That's why he's struggling to get, top of the division. He's got no power. And that's what Vettori can do in this fight. He can take all these shots, the volume, and then power him in the next, maybe 3rd, 4th, 5th round. Outpower him with strength, will, and strength, power, will. That's all I want to see in this fight. The will and strength of the Orc. I love repeating that, because I think people overanalyze these fights sometimes, but it is just about strength and will. And if you've got them in the corner and you're going for those shots against the cage, you've got to just break clinches and strike. You can't stay there and just throw tappy knees and little elbows in the clinch. You've got to go for it. And Marvin Vettori's shown that in the past, that he will break up the clinch and he'll strike and he'll hit you until you go down, because he can take what you give him back, and you can hit him as many times as you want, but he's going to continue to push, and he will go for them little knees and kicks in the clinches. He kicks people a lot, actually, when he's at range. So he's got a lot of things that you don't really give him credit for. He uses leg kicks well, and he likes to kick at range, and he likes to throw jabs. He just doesn't have any coordination, unfortunately. So he doesn't do that quick, and it looks in slow motion. So I hope that he gets the win. I think if I had to pick, I'm still going to go with Dolidze. I'm throwing you off in these predictions. That's a bit of a theme this week. I'm giving you the argument for the guy I'm not going to pick. I think Dolidze's still going to win because I don't think Marvin Vettori is going to do any of the things I just said for the past 5 minutes because he's retarded. Thanks for watching, guys. I think Dolidze will get this one by decision. As I've said, I think he's just going to be able to have his own way like he did in the Anthony Smith fight, because as I've just ranted about for 5 minutes, that was the idea if Dolidze was fighting someone with a brain, but unfortunately for Marv, he's just not going to be able to do that because he's got the brain IQ of a retarded 8-year-old, basically. So not even an 8-year-old like, you know, the Michael Chandler IQ. I'd say people talk about Chandler having the worst IQ in the UFC. Marvin Vettori's like that, but times 10. So I think this is a good time for Dolidze to fight Marvin. He's been out a while, and I think he's going to be just as retarded, and I think he's going to lose. And also, he lost a grappling match recently, so that wrestling won't even be a factor, because I think he's probably going to think, I'm shit at this, so I may as well just do what I always do and get hit. Thanks, guys, for watching.